Another day and another new Chinese brand and yet another challenger to the Tesla Model Y. This is the IM6, which is from a new brand called IM, which is a JV between a Chinese automotive giant, Shanghai Automotive or SAIC, and a Chinese e-commerce giant called Alibaba. IM stands for Intelligence in Motion, but just how clever is this fully electric SUV and just how premium is it? And is it an IM or is it an MG? I'm Jez Spinks and you're watching Chasing Cars. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
We're starting at the rear of the car for the walk around. Not because there's nothing particularly interesting about the front end. Well, actually there is nothing really interesting about the front end, but the rear there is because of the badging. So a bit of background. IM is a brand that was launched in 2020, so a few years ago now. And in China, this particular model is known as the IM LS6. But here it's an IM6. As you'll see here, MG Motor. So MG is another SAIC brand or Shanghai Automotive. And of course, they've been embedded in Australia a good few years now. So I can understand they wanted to go with that association so Australians could feel a bit more confident about the IM brand. But it does leave us wondering, is this an IM6? Is it IM6 presented by MG Motor? Or is it an MG IM6? Anyway, regardless, the logo for IM does look kind of cool, and the little round part of the logo here doubles as the boot opening release. We've got a full width light bar here running just beneath. Very nice design feature of the car, this sort of pinched ducktail rear, even if it is straight out of the Aston Martin DBX design book. The IM6 definitely doesn't look as good as that sporty British SUV, and from some angles, the IM6 does look a little bit awkward, a little bit droopy. Doesn't look as good as the IM5 sedan version. Some nice touches such as the flush door handles. This is a feature that was debuted on the Range Rover Velar quite a few years ago, but we don't mind that. And there is a little neat trick with this that you only just have to pop your fingers inside the slot here. Doors pop open, nice and easy to open. Frameless windows, front and rear, double glazed windows as well. This is the flagship performance version, and that comes with staggered 21-inch rims, wider rubber at the rear, same as the mid-spec Platinum, by the way. The base model comes with 20-inch wheels. Length of the car, about 4.9 metres, a little bit shorter than the IM5 sedan and longer than the Model Y. The IM6 largely replicates the IM5 lineup, even in pricing. So we've got 3 trim grades, 2 electrical architectures. The base model, that's a 400-volt platform with a 75-kilowatt LFP battery. Then the mid-spec Platinum and this flagship Performance, they're 800-volt architecture, so there's something that puts them above your Tesla Model Y. Pricing starts from $60,990 drive away up to this Performance model, which is $80,990 drive away. The Performance is dual motor all-wheel drive. The other 2 IM6 models are rear-wheel drive. If you want the longest range IM6, then you want the Platinum, which comes with a WLTP of 555 kilometers. And of course, the fastest model is this Performance, which can go from 0 to 100 in a claimed 3.4 seconds. So for a quick comparison with the Model Y, as we should do, well, generally you've got slightly cheaper prices with the IM6, but the equivalent Model Y does offer you more range and faster performance. First impressions of the IM6 interior, that it's certainly unlike anything else in the MG portfolio. Perceived quality is very high. A lot of that is driven by the cabin being absolutely plastered in artificial leather. It's right across the dash, the console, the door trim, and the upholstery. Now, this is an optional interior trim. Standard is Highland Grey. This is called Dover Beige. Anyone that knows Dover knows that white is the more famous colour because of the cliffs, but we'll let that slide. But with the off-white colour of the seats and the chunky square padding, I'm going to call this Asylum Spec. Now, the premium execution is not totally nailed throughout the cabin. There is electric adjustment for the front seats, but it's not particularly extensive. And when you look at lower parts of the cabin, like the under console storage here, and the lower parts of the door, very cheap plastics. And then you've got on the doors, you've got a upper door speaker that looks very classy here and a metal effect, but then lower down you've got this kind of sort of square plastic speaker. So not quite brilliant in that case. Do have some fancy digital screens, as we come to expect these days, particularly in electric cars. 26-inch display right across the top of the dash. Essentially 2 screens, left side touchscreen, then digital cluster ahead. And then here, aping the Porsche Taycan, is a central touchscreen on this raked center console. Aside from the steering wheel stalks and window switches, the cabin is basically free of physical switchgear. That's a good or bad thing depending on your preference. I know what mine is. I like to have some physical controls because in the instance of the IM6, pretty much all your key functions, controls are all in this central touchscreen, and some of the options can be quite buried. So here's just one screen, then you go to this other one, and it's quite full on with all your options for lighting, for windows, heating. Steering wheel control is not electrically adjustable, which is a bit of a surprise. That's just a manual adjust here, but your side mirrors, for example, all changed via this screen. And then there's a driving page. We click on that. Your driving modes, we'll touch on those when we actually come to driving the car. But it's a setup that does suggest you're going to be easily distracted when driving. Plenty of headroom in the rear seat, even with the full-length glass panoramic roof, which by the way is thermally insulated. We're told 78% heat reduction, and that you can actually fry an egg out on the top on a very hot day and still be able to touch the glass. Knee space, also pretty generous, but as you'd expect for a car that has a wheelbase that's nearly 3 meters long. Good foot space, and if you're not happy with this recline angle, you can adjust that using the seat top lever, have it more upright, further back if you want a bit more of a snooze. Interesting thing, the difference between IM5 and IM6, well, a couple of differences actually. You get a fully flat floor with the IM6 where there's a little bump in the middle on the sedan, and the bench is much more comfortable than the sedan because this has got a much higher seat base. Though saying that, even with these extended cushions here, the underthigh could be a little bit better. But then you've got this center armrest, which is almost the entire middle section of the seat back, 2 cup holders and a little slot for your phone. But this is a completely different armrest to the one that you get in the IM5. And you've got seat pockets, only a single USB-C port down here and a vent. And on the back of the seat back is a little bit of an IM gimmick called IM Mag, and that's for some magnetized accessories, presuming this one is for an iPad holder. But saying that, looking at the configurator, the options for the accessories is extremely limited. Let's check out the boot. Auto tailgate, of course. IM, or MG, quotes 646 litres of cargo capacity, nearly 200 litres more than the IM5 liftback sedan, and it is noticeably wider in the boot area. Something else the IM5 doesn't get: underfloor storage area here. Both the models do get air suspension on the Performance variant, and that brings the ability to press buttons here to lower or raise the rear end to help with loading. 12-volt socket. We are lacking release levers for the seat backs, which are a 60-40 split. That's a little bit disappointing, and the seats also don't fold fully flat. And we're also missing a spare tyre. It's a tyre repair kit instead. There's a bong to get things started as we're starting our driving test in the urban environment first. And IM has its ADAS system or suite of driver aids. We've got a driver monitoring camera over here. There's another Bing, and I'm not quite sure what that's for. We've got a Tesla style autopilot graphic in the driver cluster showing other cars coming around. There's some ghostly pedestrians, but there's no instruction to tell me what that Bing was for. So did I go out of my lane? I'm pretty sure. And now as I'm trying to figure things out, I'm now getting distraction warnings. I'm now getting lots of bing, 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 bings. Again, I'm not sure what that is. Maybe I'm attention, risk of collision ahead. I'm pretty sure there isn't. I'm doing 35 kilometers an hour with no other cars around. Okay, what's that for? I'm doing 40 in a 50 zone, and I think the problem here is that the speed limit recognition system thinks we're in a 40 zone, where we're not. What is? Yeah. Okay, so this is really a really annoying system. So there's a speed limit warning, there's lane departure warning, there's distraction warnings, and to be honest, they're the things that are being distracting. So yeah, my tip, and the only way we can stay sane driving this car around town, is to switch off the ADAS system, and you've got to go into the central touch screen down here. I wonder if I'll be able to do this function without any more bings or bongs. So press that here. Yeah, I'm going to try not to get a distraction warning here. And now we should be able to have fairly peaceful progress around town. Oh, hold on, I thought I'd turn that off. The rear view vision is absolutely abysmal. It's a sliver of vision. May as well be a Polestar 4, which of course doesn't have a rear window, but where that uses a digital rear view camera, that's actually the rear view mirror. This car has a different approach, and if you just flick up the little scroller on the right side of the steering wheel, it uses one of the cameras to show you what's going on behind, and the image quality is pretty good. It doesn't stay up permanently, so you have to keep flicking it if you want to keep it up there, because you can actually, another bing, you can actually pack away the rear view mirror. We just do it like this, clips up like that. I don't recall ever being able to do that in a car before, but if you know of one, of course, let us know in the comments below. So there's 9 external high definition cameras, so they also bring up video feeds when you indicate left and right, and conveniently if you click left, you get the vision on the left side, and go right, you get the camera in the driver cluster. Something I'm definitely appreciating with the IM6 around town is the rear axle steering. Gives 6 degrees, up to 6 degrees of movement of the rear wheels, because it makes this 5 meter long vehicle, almost 5 meters long vehicle, feel extremely maneuverable around town. The turning circle is absolutely terrific. IM reckons it's the equivalent of a Mini Cooper hatchback, and I'm not going to disagree. The urban ride isn't terrific, it's got to be said, despite having air suspension. Definitely don't feel like we're riding on a cloud. Suspension is quite reactive for a fair bit of movement, so rarely smooth, rarely isolating you from the road surface. So that's a little bit disappointing for a car that's positioning itself as a luxury electric SUV. Okay, so we're out of town now, onto the open road, and I have discovered a shortcut for switching off the driver aids, thankfully, and it's as simple as clicking the little thumb scroll button on the right of the steering wheel. That brings up a page on the central touchscreen, and here it's given us a list of things that you can turn off all in one go. Speed limit warning, lane departure assist. I'm trying not to be distracted and get the warning in. Pay attention to my surroundings. Distraction warning, so yeah, we want all of that off. So close all, confirm, thank you very much. Hopefully now fewer beeps, bongs and bings, because yeah, being pestered by driver aids is not a luxury motoring experience. And certainly even having all your climate controls buried in a digital menu really isn't helpful. Just even getting a basic function such as recirc just requires too much attention for what it really needs to be. On the ergonomics plus side, however, with the IM6, I do love this feature. The radar cruise control, very simple. So the transmission stalk operates that. You just pull it down for D for a second time. So from when you're actually in D, that engages it. And then we've got these little paddles behind the steering wheel. and they're not to adjust the regen braking. They are simply for changing your speed. So there's an up and a down, and then on the right side, those pedals are for adjusting the gap to the vehicle ahead. The IM6's ride wasn't good around town, and that air suspension, which, mind you, is standard only on this flagship performance model. But yeah, the suspension, it's easily agitated. It's generally knobbly or lumpy depending on the road surface, and the IM6 is absolutely terrible at trying to absorb potholes or bigger bumps. They send shudders through the cabin. What the IM6 is good at absorbing, however, is sound. It features road noise cancelling tech using 20 internal speakers, and combined with the double glazing that you get on the side windows as well as the panoramic roof, it's a really quiet place to be when you're driving around in this IM6, even at higher speeds. The steering is smooth, though otherwise not much else to really like about it. The turning is quite lazy, certainly compared with the IM5 sedan that we have driven back to back with this IM6 SUV. So the SUV just not as sporty to drive as the sedan. Doesn't ride as well either, for that matter. You can change the weighting of the steering along with many other parts of the chassis setup and electronics. So in here in this central touchscreen, again in the driving menu, yet another menu page, you can go into custom and you can change things like the power delivery, brake pedal force, we're going to come on to that in a minute. Then there's the steering weighting. So lots of things you can change. You certainly really don't want to change them on the fly. But generally, honestly, comfort mode, I just think that's the mode that suits this car most, even if it doesn't give you a comfortable ride in that mode. Now, talking about the brake pedal force. So the regen braking is pretty weak, actually. So if I just lift off the throttle there, it's almost semi-coasting. But what we do like is the transition from the regen braking to the real braking system, the Continental brakes, because it's really seamless. So importantly, when you're driving every day, it's actually quite easy to modulate the braking and bring the IM6 to a standstill nice and smoothly. If we bring another Model Y comparison just into the equation here, the Tesla is a car you can predominantly drive with a single pedal, the throttle, on and off, whereas the IM6 is most definitely a two-pedal affair. We've also done some performance testing, and those Continental brakes up front do a very good job indeed of bringing the IM6 to a standstill very quickly. The performance has the same 100 kilowatt hour battery as the mid-spec Platinum, though this gets the extra motor up front. So dual motors, all-wheel drive, so it's much quicker. IM quotes about 570 kilowatts combo for the electric motors, more than 800 Newton meters in combo. They actually specify the outputs individually for the front and rear electric motors, but whatever the outputs actually are, this car is rapid. And we're just going to put it into sport mode now, and again I'm going to have to go down to that central touchscreen menu. Okay, click. No, I don't want that page. There we go, driving. Okay, sport mode. Put it into sport mode, and now the air suspension lowers the ride height, hunkers down, and let's go. Oh, blimey, went slightly lightheaded there. Yeah. Crikey. Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, we have come to expect this, obviously, from the really quick EVs. So maybe not mind-blowing anymore, but it still gives you that little bit of a shock on the takeoff, the G-force. 3.4 seconds is the claim, 0.2 slower than the equivalent IM5 sedan, and performance tested this car, and guess what? We achieved 3.4 seconds. I really like the power delivery of the IM6. In the comfort mode, it's very progressive. In the sport mode, maybe not so much, and certainly I wouldn't put the brake mode into sport either, because that comes really sharp when you touch the brake pedal. Of course, driving quickly is not going to be good for your battery efficiency, but even in regular driving that we've been doing for the last couple of days, we have been getting an average of about 22 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, so pretty poor efficiency really, and that equates to just over 450 kilometers of real world range when you compare to the official WLTP of 505 kilometers, which by the way is 70 kilometers down on the equivalent IM5 Performance sedan, which is about 100 kilos lighter. So Tesla's efficiency for the Model Y is vastly better. We've been seeing below 14 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers quite consistently in our testing. But where the IM does trump Tesla is with rapid charging. So the 800 volt platform IM6 models have charging capability of 396 kilowatts. That translates to a claimed recharging time of just over 15 minutes for 30 to 80% battery. And for those not up to speed on their Tesla specs, the maximum DC charging for a Model Y is 250 kilowatts, or nearly half an hour for a 10 to 80% recharge. Of course, good luck trying to find a charger that will give you 396 kilowatts. We've only been given this IM6 Performance flagship variant to sample so far, though on paper the mid-range Platinum does look like it might be the sweet spot in the lineup, especially with its longer range. Maybe that will also change our view that this IM, or MG SUV, isn't a Model Y beta. And if you're not worried about the high-riding body style or not that fussed about rear seat comfort, then the IM5 sedan is a much better driving experience. But let us know what you think about the IM6 in the comments below, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe. Thanks for watching Chasing Cars.